Dead at 27, John Kordic didn't lose a battle on the ice. He lost everyone off of it. The NHL didn't sign him to score. They signed him to bleed so their stars wouldn't have to. They called him a goon. They called him Rambo. They never once called to ask if he was okay. This is the story of the man the league used up and threw away. Kordic played hockey the way every Canadian kid does, for the love of it. He moved the puck well, skated well, scored. At the end of the 1984-85 season, he was putting up real points on the Sherbrooke Canadiens, Montreal's minor league affiliates. That is not a goon. That is a hockey player. But somewhere between junior hockey and the NHL, the math changed. Kordic was big, 6'2", 210 pounds, and he could handle himself in a way scouts don't teach. Clean, calculated, over the top before the other guy knew what happened. Portland Winterhawks noticed. Memorial Cup 1983. Sherbrooke gave him the Calder Cup in 1985. And by the spring of 1986, the Montreal Canadiens dressed him for all 18 playoff games on their run to the Stanley Cup. He was 21 years old. He had a ring. And the Canadiens had made the terms of the deal clear. Kordic was not there to score. He was there to make sure nobody touched the guys who did. Patrick Waugh stayed clean in the crease because Kordic's fists made the cost of going near him obvious. Guy Carbonneau kept his head up because the moment someone slashed his face, coach Jean Perron sent Kordic over the boards. Perron understood exactly what he had. He beat the best fighters in the league, Perron said. Nobody could take John Kordic. But here is what Perron also saw. And what the fans were chanting, Kordic, 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 at the Montreal Forum, never did. Kordic's father had supported his son's hockey career from the beginning. He believed in John's ability. What he never accepted, not once, was the fighting. And John knew it. Jean Perron would find him crying into a payphone after games they won, trying to explain to his father why he had dropped the gloves again. His father put it plainly. He started using nothing but his fists. After a while, I didn't recognize my kid. Kordic himself never pretended. He told reporters exactly where he stood. I know why I'm here. It's no secret what I do. If you look at my stats, there's always been more penalty minutes than points.
I got drafted because I could fight well, and I got called up a couple times because I could fight and play tough. And
he even told the Canadiens he wanted to change his game. In 1988, he went to Montreal's management and asked for a chance to play. Actually play, not just patrol. The answer was no. The organization needed his fists, not his stick handling. That was the contract. And Kordic signed it because he believed it was the only way to stay in the NHL.
You know, Chris started that way, and now he gets to play, so I have to start that way. And if that's what they want me to do it, you know, for the first year or so, that's what I'll do to keep me up here.
By 1988, he was the most feared fighter in professional hockey. Crowds loved him. Opponents feared him. His highlight reel was all knuckles and knockdowns. Within 4 years, he would be gone. The question is, what happened between the peak and the end? And whether anyone in a position of power bothered to watch it while it did. Over 100 fights across 7 NHL seasons. The real number was higher. And every single one of them left something behind that Kordic could never see. Researchers at Boston University, the same team led by Dr. Ann McKee that found CTE in 110 out of 111 examined NFL brains, have since studied the brains of NHL enforcers. Every single one of them showed damage. Kordic's brain was never examined. He passed before any of this research existed. But the pattern was already writing itself across his behavior, his relationships, and his ability to hold a life together. Now, stop here for a second, because there is a number the NHL never wanted next to Kordic's name. Not 97, not his penalty minutes, his trade count. 4 teams in 7 seasons. And the timing tells you everything. November 1988. Montreal ships him to Toronto in exchange for Russ Courtnall, a skilled forward. It became one of the most lopsided trades in Canadiens history. Not because Kordic was worth more, because the Canadiens got a legitimate player and Toronto got a problem they thought they could manage. They could not. In Toronto, Kordic's off-ice behavior spiraled. He crashed one sports car, then drove the replacement into a ditch. He got into an altercation with his own teammate, goaltender Alan Bester, at a team luncheon. Toronto police tipped off Leafs management that Kordic was spending time with a dangerous crowd downtown. He slumped into depression. And yet, in the 1989-90 season, he still managed 9 goals, the most he ever scored, alongside 252 penalty minutes in 55 games. The talent was still there. The person around it was fracturing. Toronto moved him. Washington picked him up because their GM, David Poile, wanted to toughen up a soft roster. Poile knew the risks. He held a team meeting before Kordic even arrived. What followed was the most concentrated stretch of his career. 7 games, 101 penalty minutes, 9 fights, 2 suspensions. He missed a practice. He went completely absent from the team. The Capitals paid for treatment. He never played for them again. Quebec was the last stop. 19 games, 115 penalty minutes. Teammates said he seemed better for a stretch. One described him as happy. But by the time the season ended and he was sent down to the Cape Breton Oilers in the minors, the NHL had no place left for him. Don Cherry, a man who built a career celebrating toughness, said this specifically about Kordic. It is demeaning for a human being to sit on a bench for most of a game and then be thrown out there only to fight like a mad dog. 4 teams. Every one of them needed the same thing from John Kordic. And every one of them walked away when the cost of that thing became visible. The question is whether the league itself ever looked at what those transactions were telling them, and if they did, what exactly they chose to do about it. Here is what makes this a systemic story and not just a personal one. Summer of 1986. Kordic has just won the Stanley Cup. He's 21 years old. And when he shows up to training camp that fall, his coach, Jean Perron, cannot believe what he's looking at. 4 months earlier, he was playing at a weight of 205, and then all of a sudden he's playing at 225. Perron got phone calls. People telling him Kordic was on steroids, asking him to look after the kid. The signs were obvious. The rapid bulk, the acne covering his back. And what happened? Nothing. Perron saw it. Management saw it. Teammates saw it. Former players have told stories about coaches catching Kordic and others using substances on road trips, walking out of the room saying, "I didn't see anything."
But it was like, we looked the other way. We don't say nothing.
Nobody intervened because the NHL had built a system designed specifically to avoid intervention. The league's drug policy at the time was straightforward. Test positive, automatic suspension. No treatment program, no counseling, no questions about what was driving a young player to use it in the first place. The policy was not built to help anyone. It was built to make the problem disappear from the box score. If you were struggling, you learned to hide it. And if you couldn't hide it, you got moved to another team, which is exactly what kept happening to Kordic. This was not a gap in the system. This was the system. Now, here's where it gets sharper. What the league knew and when they knew it only became public because a federal judge in Minneapolis forced it out. Unsealed in 2016, a September 2011 email from Deputy Commissioner Bill Daley to Gary Bettman. Fighting raises the incidence of head injuries and concussions, which raises the incidence of depression onset, which raises the incidence of personal tragedies. Bettman's reply chose one word that told you everything. Predispositions. Not the role, not the system. The men themselves were the problem. The settlement came in 2018. $18.9 million across 318 former players. $22,000 each. No admission of negligence. The NFL paid over $1 billion for the same damage. The NHL paid less than 2% of that and closed the file. Kordic never lived to see any of it. By the time the league put any of this on paper, he had been gone for nearly 2 decades. The question now is what his final months looked like, and who, if anyone, was still paying attention. In the final 2 weeks of his life, John Kordic knew he was losing. He had moved back to Quebec after the season, hoping to earn a tryout with the Edmonton Oilers, the team from his hometown, the place where everything started. He was working out with his friend Tony Twist, trying to stay sharp and hold on. But he could feel himself slipping, and he did something that most people in his position never do. He picked up the phone. He called James Fearing, his addiction counselor in Minneapolis, and asked him to come to Quebec. He told Fearing directly that he did not think he could beat this on his own. Fearing agreed to fly out in mid-August. He never made it in time. August 8th, 1992, the Motel Maxim in La Anse-en-Lorette, a suburb of Quebec City. Kordic had been staying there since Friday and had been using substances, alcohol, and steroids throughout the weekend. By Saturday evening, motel staff could hear the room coming apart and called local police. 2 officers from the municipal force arrived first, assessed the situation, and immediately called for backup. 6 more officers from the Quebec City force responded, bringing the total to at least 8 on the scene. Kordic came out of the room intoxicated, paranoid, and aggressive, and he fought every single one of them. Officers used pepper spray and physical restraint to get him into handcuffs and then onto an ambulance. The ride to Laval University Hospital was 7 minutes long, and Kordic went into cardiac arrest before they arrived. He was pronounced gone on arrival. Lung failure due to heart malfunction. The coroner's report later found 0.1 milligrams of substance in his system, along with needle marks on his arm and unused syringes and steroids in the motel room. He was 27 years old, engaged to be married to a woman named Nancy Massey, and completely alone when it happened. His father had passed the year before after a long illness. Jean Perron, the coach who had once sent him over the boards to protect Patrick Waugh and Guy Carbonneau, delivered the only honest epithet anyone ever offered. John Kordic died the way he lived. Very dangerously. The NHL issued a statement of condolence. The season machinery rolled forward without pause. Nobody in a position of authority asked the obvious question. Years after Kordic was gone, a woman named Jennifer Belak-Liang sat in front of a CBC camera and said something no one inside the NHL has ever said. Her husband Wade had been an enforcer for 14 seasons. He once told her plainly that fighting was the only reason he still had a job.
He's like, I can't stay here unless I fight.
She buried him in 2011 at 35. And what she told the camera was this. It's an injustice to everyone else out there, I think, for them not to admit that this can happen. John Kordic called his counselor 2 weeks before he died and asked for help. The help didn't arrive in time. The NHL's response arrived 6 years later, in the form of a settlement worth less than 2% of what the NFL paid. They called it closure. If this story made you feel something, hit like. It's the fastest way to make sure someone who's never heard his name does. Subscribe, because that is what this channel exists to do. Find the stories the league buried, and make sure they don't stay that way. And if you want to support us, super thanks is right under this video. Every contribution means another story like this one gets told.